Welcome to the podcast, Whether or Not and to What Degree. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Chrissy Kohler alongside First Alert Meteorologist Katherine Noel. Katherine, it has been a wild start to hurricane season.
I know, right? I mean, Beryl taking all of just the spotlight with it, too. I mean, we've had a few storms we've been tracking, but Beryl just, breaking records, like left and right, too.
Yeah. So we're only a month in.
Yeah.
It's early July right now while we're recording this. So, we're just a little over a month into the hurricane season. Yeah. We already had three storms. And you're right, Beryl has just been breaking records left and right over there.
Yeah. Continuing too. And now, going past the Cayman Islands here, and this is still expected to be a hurricane. We're past the Category 4, Category 5, which should we even be talking about that this time of year?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are probably wondering.
Yeah.
I
think that's what's caught a lot of people's attention is that, we would typically be more talking about this later on in the season rather than in the late part of June, early July.
And June 1st is the start of hurricane season. We normally see, it's weird to even say normally see Cat 5 because that's not even in itself normal.
Right.
But if anything, that's not going to come normally until September.
Which is crazy.
And it's July.
Which is crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
So Beryl actually formed the last couple of days of June and then rapidly intensified. Within 48 hours, it had gone from a tropical storm to a Category 4 hurricane. And this was the earliest formation of a 4 or a 5, both. The earliest formation that we've seen of a major Cat 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And one of the strongest, I should say, June hurricane we've ever seen on record. And what's interesting, Katherine, is that this is as far east, too, as we've ever seen any formation in the month of June. So that's certainly something that's really important to point out is that formation in that part of the Atlantic Ocean is odd this time of year.
Yeah.
Really quite strange.
A little frightening.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are kind of like, well, okay, it's all the tropics. All of this is where, we could potentially see the development. So why does it matter where these things develop? And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that, typically when we're talking about June and even early July, we're still kind of in that homegrown phase that we all talk about, where it's these areas in the tropics that are typically closer to the coast. A lot of times we're dealing with even systems that will come through as cold fronts through the eastern United States, move off the coast, and then quickly turn around and develop into a just short-lived tropical system. Yeah. Depression, tropical storm, head back towards the coast. And you get some squally weather out of that. So it's not typical to necessarily see these monster storms developing out in the middle of the Atlantic this time of year.
Yeah. And we just had a graphic, too, to talk about, if you're wondering, the amount of Category 5 hurricanes. June, 0, July, 2 for the Atlantic Basin. September, obviously, 26 there. And then August, October as well. So this is clearly just something that is not common.
Gosh. You look at those numbers, Katherine, that you put together there, and even just to have a Category 5 hurricane in and of itself is so rare when you look at some of those numbers. And then to think that we had one in early July is stunning.
Yeah. So Category 5 storms, too, that is the highest that it goes on our scale. So just for anyone who doesn't know, the highest it can reach, what you need, max sustained winds, 157 miles per hour. And I feel like if people don't really know, and I was reading online about this too, some good ways to kind of correlate it. It's similar to EF3 for those winds out there, which I thought was kind of interesting for if you're more familiar with the tornadoes and that scale strength.
Sure.
So clearly it's just not common. But we actually have seen Beryl makes it now the 3rd year in a row of a Cat 5 storm.
Yeah, and
hurricane.
You were just telling me about this the other day that this is getting up on one of the longer stretches of years in a row with Cat 5s, right?
Yeah, so currently the record for that is 4 in a row. Now we're 3. So 4 in a row, and that was back, I believe, 2016 to 2019.
Wow.
So
That's a lot.
yeah.
That's
So maybe,
definitely a lot.
I mean, who knows? Next year we could tie that. If there's one the year after, make it 5. I mean, who knows?
Right.
That's still far away.
Obviously, it's a little too, yeah, we don't
still have this
know
whole
what we're
season.
looking at for 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
But we do know that at least 2024 is likely going to be a very active season for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we talk about the Cat 5, and I think that's why it's so important for us to kind of talk about just kind of how rare this is. And,
Right.
You want to take us through some of these stats, Katherine?
Yeah, so only 40 Cat 5 hurricanes have happened in the Atlantic Basin since, this is 1924 for our data that we have.
Ooh.
This is all stats from NOAA, by the way. 9 Category 5s have happened, Atlantic hurricanes, since 2016. So that's also, a decent amount there. If you look at the timeline, we've seen things really pick up out there over the last several years.
Yeah, for sure.
Strengthening, those waters and whatnot. So we'll talk about that. But Beryl marks the 3rd year in a row. This is what we just mentioned, in a row of at least one Cat 5. Previous years, obviously, were the last 2. So that highest streak is 4 years, from 2016 to 2019. And I don't know. We have to see what's in our future, when it comes to if we could potentially, there is a potential, I guess, that we could beat that.
Well, when you think about some of these Category 5 hurricanes that have made a big impact as Cat 5s over top of land, I think of Dorian in 2019. You think of Ian a couple of years ago in Florida. So these aren't just necessarily Cat 5s in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. These are Cat 5s that are actually impacting land. And when you look at that devastation after these storms move through, you look at Dorian. Dorian was an outlier in terms of how long they were under those Cat 5 conditions. It just sat over top of the Bahamas. But you look at just the devastation that those types of storms leave behind, and it's like, those Cat 5s need to be taken seriously.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, like you mentioned, in 2023 we had Hurricane Lee. Well, I don't know if we mentioned that or not. And then the year before was, I believe, Ian. So
in Florida.
That's our now Beryl. And then also, maybe a lot of people wondering, we talked about this, when are they the most common? So we already went through September usually. And there's a good reason of why they are so common and why we have the tropical frequency maxed out in certain times of the year, usually because they're just areas that they're going through. The ocean water is just conducive to being able to actually form something so strong because of the warm waters during that time of year.
Yeah.
That's when things start to peak, and that's what it all comes down to. But we are seeing it now.
Right.
We saw it now. That's why Beryl made it as a Cat 5. So it's alarming. A little, can be. And a lot of people wondering, well, what's that mean for the rest of the season?
Right. Yeah, especially when you're talking about these incredibly warm waters. That is just hurricane fuel.
Right.
And what we're seeing right now is that those waters in the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, are more typical of what we would see in September rather than what we would typically see in early July. So I think that that's where some of this alarm comes in, is that, so, water heats up very differently than land. We obviously have bigger fluctuations during the day. We go from 60s at night to 80s in the afternoon, or 70s at night to 90s in the afternoon. We get these big temperature swings, whereas water heats up. There's less temperature swings through the day, so there's more consistent, and it's more of a gradual uptick. So while we're in the 90s on land, there's still even some upper 70s, low 80s early into the summer before things really start to ramp up. And the fact that we're seeing water temperatures that are already into the mid 80s 2 months ahead of schedule, it shows that we've got a lot of fuel to work with out in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we still have months left, of hurricane season. That's the thing.
Right.
I believe end of November, and then, it leaves a lot of room for potentially more storms. Right now, as a forecaster, there's no way of being able to call that. If people are wondering, we just have to wait and see, and how it churns, and just how those temps stay or don't stay, through the ocean waters. We still have plenty of names to get through, but this is expected to be a record-breaking season, and similar to 2020, which was.
Right.
And that's the forecast that we had back in May, when they came out and gave us what we can expect. So here it is from NOAA, the 2024 hurricane forecast. The named storms, 17 to 25. Normally we're sitting at 14. I feel like we're going to reach that. Hurricanes
Easily.
8 to 13. Major hurricanes, which are major hurricanes, Cat 3 or above, 4 to 7 of those. And this is all, above normal when you look at that normal versus the forecast.
Yeah.
So it's expected to be like another really big season compared to, and especially like we saw in 2020, which I feel like I can totally see this happening.
Right, yeah. 2020 comes to mind. 2005. 2005 was the year of Katrina. 2020 was, so those are the 2 years that we've gone past that list of names, that 21 names. There's 21 names on the list. There's 5 letters missing, and don't ask me which ones they are, but there's 5 letters missing. So we've got 21 names, and in 2005 as well as 2020 were the 2 years, the only 2 times on record that we've gone into the Greek alphabet. Now that's changed. They did after 2020, the World Meteorological Society decided we're not going to go in the Greek alphabet anymore. We're going to go into a second list of names. We're going to start pulling from this list. So if we pass W and go past that 21st storm and go into 22, we'll just have a second list of names. We'll start back at A and go in there. But I mean, that's what we're talking about here, is that potential to be on the same level with those seasons in terms of the tropical in terms of the amount of storms that we could potentially get there.
What do you think?
I certainly think it's well within the fact that we're starting off at such a high rate of speed, that we've already got 3 of these storms under our belt, and it's just the first month. The fact that we've got these warm water temperatures to work with. If you get a stretch of weather in the Atlantic where you don't have any Saharan dust to slow things down, where the wind shear kind of gets to that right level, and that tropical wave train starts off the coast of Africa, we may be seeing one after the next that starts to develop out over the Atlantic. And then, where they go at that point is going to be, the steering features that we've got going on in the current times. So that's being able to say, we're getting one in South Carolina at this point in the season. We can't. Anybody who tells you that,
you don't know.
They don't know. No, where things are going to go and where things are going to hit, we don't know until these things develop. Right. Because it's all has to do with the current weather pattern and what's going on elsewhere. But I do think that it's going to be a very active season. I think we're not going to slow down anytime soon. That's for sure.
Right. And I know we do have something to show that we're off to a really fast start here. Third tropical storm, Chris, on June 30th. First hurricane was Beryl, first major hurricane Beryl, and this is all within that first month of hurricane season.
Two months ahead of schedule in terms of a major hurricane, and about 6 weeks ahead of schedule in terms of a first hurricane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think people are probably sitting here, there's been, of course, a lot of focus on Beryl as it moves through the Caribbean and everything that it's been doing, but you almost blinked and you missed Chris.
That's
like
true.
Quick development off the coast of Mexico.
Yeah, people were like, Chris?
Tropical
Where?
storm,
What?
right?
Yeah.
I think it was a tropical storm for about 12 hours.
Yeah.
And
if
then,
that, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you talk about tropical storms in terms of kind of the range of things, you can still get some decent storm surge from those. And some decent rains out of that, especially depending on Mexico, very mountainous area, that Gulf Coast of Mexico. But it's certainly, I think a lot of us focus on those hurricanes, and so it's important to take every storm and take it at what it is, because they can all have different personalities, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something too when it comes to some of those stronger storms and just what we're seeing, obviously Beryl was able to make it to its strength because, like mentioned, the warm ocean waters, because of that can all go hand in hand too and just kind of like tally off one another, heavy rainfall. Temps lead to, more moisture, higher temps, more moisture, that sort of thing, more rainfall, more storm surge, more flooding, more this, and all just like tax on the intensity of like damage, too, which is concerning. And it's hard you can't just sit here and say it's going to happen again because we don't know, but if it does, that's something of concern that we could see more with these storms, whether it's a Cat 5 or not. just the intensity of it barreling on one top of another when it comes to like those effects, which is something we could see as we go throughout the season, potentially.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, there's so much more ahead of us. We've just been talking about, it's only been a month and we've still got 5 more months to go of hurricane season.
Yeah.
So now's the time where we actually start to see more development out in the Atlantic through the month of July. This is where we really start to pay more attention to that central and even the western parts of the Atlantic Ocean closer to the Caribbean, and even still off the coast of the United States. You see that big orange swath there. That's still an area for development this time of year. This is the breeding grounds. This is where we typically see the storms start and develop, not necessarily where they go,
right,
but just kind of where they develop. And then, you see in August, we really start to see more and more of that Atlantic development continues into September. Starts to back off a little bit once we get into October, but September and October are really the peak there. And then by November, it's a little more rare to get those November storms.
We were talking the other day. We did have Nicole.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Remember her?
We had Nicole. It's just you start to get those temperatures that are cooling down. It starts to back off.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. So I will say I think the next couple of weeks look fairly quiet.
They do.
Based off of what kind of those long range models look like, but certainly what. I do think that probably late July into August, Katherine, we're probably going to start to really ramp this back up. We were talking about this a little earlier. These are the top 10, which
hurricane seasons. Yeah,
I fully believe
we'll be up there. I think top 3 maybe. I mean, yeah, I would say. I feel pretty confident saying top 3.
Yeah, I definitely think we'll at least crack the top 5, if not the top 3. Yeah, for sure. Because we're just looking at prolific numbers. And again, that 30 in 2020, the most on record, 28, 2005, 28 storms. That was the year of Katrina. I think that people tend to associate hurricane seasons with those particular storms.
Right, and, easy to remember that way.
Right, so it's just these are years that go down in the history books, and I think that we're going to throw 2024 right up there with them. And it's interesting to note 2020, 2021, and 2023, 3 of the last 4 years have been in the top 5.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Yeah. And there are multiple outlooks, that we get from different sources that will come out and talk about what those organizations see for the upcoming season, and all of them did compare us to 2020 for the 2024 season.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
For good reason, for sure. You can't talk about hurricane season, I don't think, without reminding people that you got to have all that safety stuff ready to go. For us, of course, we're based here in Greenville, South Carolina, where, we don't necessarily feel the direct effects in terms of having to evacuate. A lot of people actually come here to evacuate from the coast, but it still is important for the people down at the coast. If you're listening from the coast, from a different part of the country, you live in a hurricane zone, make sure you have those to-go kits ready to go. I know we lived at the beaches for 10 years.
Yeah, you were right there.
And we had a plastic bin just filled with all of the things that we didn't use on a daily basis. Stuff that you have the stuff that you're going to have to grab, the insurance papers, the safety lock box before you go. But we would have, the water, the non-perishable foods, the can opener, the first aid kit, all of that stuff inside of a plastic bin. And my husband evacuated from the coast twice while we lived down there.
He?
Yeah, and of course I stayed and worked, but my husband left with the dogs twice because we felt like it was not a safe situation for him to stay. Fortunately, we didn't have any of that of those issues, but it's again just important to note to have those safety to-go kits. If you have a home down at the coast, check your insurance, make sure that everything is up to date. That is important to do now. You really can't do much after the storms come through. The insurance companies are going to say, sorry, you're out of luck. So you need to do it now before the storms come. So make sure all that insurance stuff is ready to go, and just, make sure that you're going to be safe. Know your evacuation plan. Again, Greenville gets that influx of people when there are evacuations out at the coast. So that's something we need to be prepared for. And then the heavy rains. We get heavy rains out of this. Severe weather possible.
Strong winds.
So
Now, it doesn't compare, but it's still Yeah, we get a little something. At least have the last several years, couple of years, that we've been here.
Well, when we're talking about these monster storms, I wasn't here during Hugo back in '89, but in just having talked to a lot of people that went through Hugo, you hear the stories of even this damage that was sustained in the Midlands, in the Charlotte area. It was a Cat 4, weakened just a little bit before it made landfall. So it was a strong Cat 4. And by the time it was moving through the Midlands and into the Charlotte area and even through the upstate, it was still a Cat 1 in terms of the wind speeds there. So it produced a lot of damage well inland. And so that's something to note, that when we're talking about these monster 4s and 5s potentially hitting, not saying we're going to see that, but if we were to see one at the Carolina coast, we would still sustain we would still have a lot of those effects here into the upstate.
Yeah.
So important for people to be prepared as we head through this hurricane season, no matter what it throws at us.
Yeah.
So
we got more to go.
We do. We do. Well, thanks for tuning in and listening to us chat a little bit, nerd out about hurricanes, and break down a little bit of just this historic Beryl and this historic start to the season here. Of course, we'll be, the First Alert Weather Team is keeping an eye on everything always. So, of course, you can get more information on our website, foxcarolina.com, our First Alert Weather app. Great way to stay up to date on that as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you for tuning in to the Whether or Not and to What Degree podcast for Katherine and myself. I hope you have a great day.
Bye.